you, Nick?
Thanks, Ian. I'm Nick, I'm an addict. A moment of great honesty to start off. I was sitting here. I hadn't even looked at the texts that you'd sent me. You just said do a share, so it was step. And then I just looked. No, you said only do step 7. I thought. But in a sense, it's good because it got me. There was just that first rush of terror and thinking, well, But and I remember sitting in Soho Square with my sponsor, going to the Krishna restaurant, and then going in and just praying together with the list, with this list of my defects and humbly asking them to be removed. But the word that was mentioned a few times there, this thing about humility, I think that's the bit, I think that's, and it's not easy, it's that, and also the fact that, as it also said, is about the relief of surrender, because it's hard work, keeping those defences up and doing that stuff. I've been clean for 36 years. I got my first day clean was the 17th of September 1988. I was in a treatment centre, and it was a relief from the beginning, to be honest. I was on a small kind of detox off methadone I'd used since I was young, and I'd been an intravenous opiate user for many years, and I knew when I got in there, when I heard what the counsellors had to say and all that, and my fellow addicts, was that realisation that these understood my condition. It wasn't about a moral deficiency, or it wasn't that I was just weird or weak-willed or anything else. And so I was ready, for the relief of that. And to this day, we were talking about it in the car on the way here, is the old I can't, we can. And so I would start by saying that to everybody in the room. The fact that you're talking about the word humility, if you have the humility to come into this room, it doesn't matter whether you're still using, you've got the desire to stop using, you're one day clean, you're whatever. It doesn't matter where you are. You're in the solution. It's a major feat. Many people can never do that. They could never come through that door. And there's something about that which is immediately there's a sense of surrender about it. And I remember the step 6. The becoming entirely ready and all that. There's something that people recognise when you work through the steps is, as soon as you focus on my defects, for example, they kind of come out to play. And I remember doing the step 4 and 5, and then and at the time I was living off the Portobello. I was living up off Ladbroke Grove in a sponsee's flat. My wife had thrown me out because I had an affair, and I hadn't been honest about it. I'd been caught eventually. So it was suddenly I was back. It was like early recovery or something. I was back there, working through the steps, living in this flat. And I was going down to some posh meeting on the Portobello. And on the way down there, a guy, a hooded youth on a bike, kind of came past me on the pavement. And I said something like, fuck off, because he clipped me, And he said, do you want me to kill you now or what? And that was it. Next thing, we were in the middle of the road. He was off the bike. I'd lost the shoe. That was the worst thing. He got up and got back on his bike, and I had like a clog on of those snowshoes or something. With a big sort of overcoat I'd got from some charity, a big cashmere overcoat and that. And he was off up the road pushing his bike, trying to get back on his bike. I was going, yeah, fuck, full on, that full shouting all over. See, yeah, I knew you looking at the bus stop. And so suddenly, I wasn't the solution. I was the problem. I was the actual the incendiary. And as I did it, I looked at the road and I could see all people walking down to this posh meeting, who were seeing me. this guy was in the meeting going, yes, spiritually, I can fancy. And then they see this other way, you're just a wild man on the street, totally. And we all know there's that thing about that release of that moment where you feel omnipotent. There's an omniscience about. It's easier than thinking. You know what I mean? It's easier to just open the things and let that energy pour through. But so that was my experience of those, and with me it was always the same things. I mean, recently we were talking about. I occasionally was involved with Sporting Chance that Tony Adams set up, so I'd see people from there, and sometimes I'd go and work at the actual place. It's in Champneys, and I walked in there. I walked into the restaurant in Champneys. I walked up to the and I saw the footballers sitting down who I was working with. So I went over and I sat with them, and the manager of the restaurant came over and said, could you go back to the counter and wait till you're seated? And I went, yes, of course. But, you know, all that kind of scouser, and you're that kind of, where you almost go, oh, yes, sorry, you know, like that. And then you think, oh, am I fucking telling me what to do, you know? So, but it was just the embarrassment of it, you know, I'm walking back to the thing where the book was and waiting. And then the woman came over to me and said, I'm really sorry about before, she said, because already I'd decided it's because I'm a scouser, you know, that's it. You know, it's injustice, you know, she's looking down on me, well, no one's going to like it. So I was full of my projections, and when she came over, she said, I'm really busy, I'm really sorry. She said, that didn't come out right, you know, and of course you go and sit with the players and all that. But it was what went on for me then around the defects. It's always the same kind of trio. First my arrogance, don't they know? First my pride, because I feel I've been made to look stupid publicly, you know. And I have a high regard for myself, you know. There's the arrogance, the inflated grandiosity, where actually no one's interested in me. No one gives a fuck. They're interested in them. It's somebody said to me in a meeting, one of my first sponsors, he said to me, and they said this, or they looked across the room in the meeting, or something like that. And he said, listen, he said, what other people think of you is none of your business. You know, he said, your business is you. And we so get tied to that stuff. And a lot of this, letting go of these defects, it's you know, it's talk about the road to freedom. It's kind of that thing where I can be, you know, on the train coming up here, there was all sorts going on the train, and someone muttering and swearing and all that kind of stuff. And there was a time when, back in that other place, the previously, it was always about me, you know. Who does he think he, you know, doesn't he? And they haven't even seen you. You know what I mean? They're in their own madness or whatever. But my immediate, you know, conclusion would be, yeah, so come and say that over here. And they're going, what? You know? So it's that. And especially, luckily as well, being 73, you get to a stage where you realise, I'm quite good at standing on my step going, yeah, you got a problem, but you fucking will have. But that's as far as it goes. I've got nothing after that. You know, there's nothing in the tank after that. It's not like, if they actually said, what are you going to do? I'd go, stand here. I'll show you. But that was always the trio was kind of, first my pride, feeling wounded, first my arrogance, don't they know who I am? I'm working for a Sporting Chance, you know, I'm highly qualified and all this bollocks, you know. And then underneath that, the self-pity. I'm in recovery, you know, don't they realise I've suffered, you know, and all that sort of stuff coming up, and it's unfair. So I'd go from the rage to wanting to burst into tears publicly, you know, and then someone goes, it's a 70-year-old man in there within tears. It's okay with a kid, you know, it's quite, you know, it's understandable, but an old man, it's repulsive, you know, fuck. So they were the main three for me, but underneath that were the other ones, the dishonesty. You know, that thing where, you know, even with the bike on the pavement, where I ended up having a fight with this youth and him running off and me losing the shoe and all the rest of it. When I was telling my sponsor about it, I walked away afterwards and I thought, he didn't clip me with the bike. I claimed he clipped me with the bike, but he didn't. Do you know what I mean? And it took me a long... But the power of our own ability to delude ourselves, you know. And how many times do people tell you stories where they say, and then I did this and that showed them, you know. And you kind of know it never happened, you know. They thought of that. They call it in literature, it's the word on the stair. You know, the thing you think afterwards. You like the Oscar Wilde thing, I have nothing to declare but my genius. He never actually said that at Custom, do you know what I mean? He thought of it afterwards and wrote it down, and the myth goes. So it was those, but it's also the thin-skinnedness. And I'm not talking about you, but for me, is that vulnerability to being hurt because of those defects, because of the pride. It makes you brittle, you know what I mean? So you can't back down. So you know, somebody told me once his mate fell in the sea out of a rowing boat and was drowning, but like didn't want to shout for help because he'd look foolish, you know. To be called out, but it's something that we immediately recognise, you know, because it's almost better to die than to be embarrassed in public. And all those going through the kind of, to this day I was saying to Ian, I have a cold shower I have a shower in the morning, and then I have a cold shower, and I go through all that stuff. And I used to do it, it'd be quite kind of I'd be like, take away my greed, my lust, my fear, you know, my grandiosity, all those, the arrogance, the self-pity and all the rest of it. Fill me with compassion, selflessness. Let me come out of my own, this thing I keep saying about everyone's interested in them. They're not interested in you. No one's watching you. You know what I mean? I said that to a footballer at Sporting Chance. He said, hang on, there's 40,000 people or 60,000. They are watching you, you know. And he said, you can go from being a villain to a hero within, you know, the bat of an eye. But mostly, you know. When I'm walking on the street and I'm thinking of stories of what the other people are thinking about me, they're not. They're going to Westfield or whatever they do. But I pray in the shower, go through all that, and then, you know, and then I get out and I try. And there's something about the punctuation of it. It doesn't mean I don't walk out of the house and then somebody bumps into me and I'm, you know, are you having a laugh or whatever, or but it's not about. So what I'm trying to say, it's not about getting rid of these things. I suffer from those same defects to this day. But I would argue, I seem to have gained, there's a shorter shelf life. I get a bit more oxygen around it and I have time to kind of think, yeah. And then it's laughable. You know what I mean? It's not like a disaster. It's, yeah, of course I'm going to feel that. I'm vulnerable, I'm human, I'm flawed, which we all are. And these things, you know, they come and go, they oscillate, they you know, pass through us, and depending on the circumstance, it's very easy to be to hold forth in a room like this where people are listening and all that, but in a different context, you know, it's we all know it's harder, you know, in conversation. You know, you ring up your partner to apologise and you've got it all worked out and it's a speech, you know, I want to say this is magnificent, you know. As soon as you start speaking, they start saying stuff and you're going, shut up. So it's sort of a myth. We live in relationship. Do you know what I mean? It's the truth of it. It's something about surrendering to that. Surrendering, in a sense, having the humility to surrender to the limitations of our agency. We don't have that much power in the world. We hardly have much power over our own bodies. They kind of breathe themselves, don't they, and do all their usual stuff themselves. And it's something about this recovery lark for me, and the thing that saved me, because, you know, years ago I used to write poetry, you know, I was very invested in this poetry, and I thought one day, you know, the world will hear of this, you know, and all that kind of thing. Someone said, why don't you go to like a poetry cafe and read it out? And I went, well, you know. But anyway, I did. I went to Covent Garden and read my stuff out. And people liked it, funnily enough. It was, you know, but no one could remember it afterwards, you know what I mean? And what was good about it was the thing about reading it out was realising it wasn't that good. But so it wasn't that good, and I was all right with that. Whereas beforehand, it was life and death. When it stayed in the shadows, and it was, yes, one day I'll show them all, and the world will change. But the Bible, you know, my fucking poetry. It was, but and I think that was the same. Going to uni, doing all the studying we've done, and all the training and all that, is that it's showing up and it's doing it, you know, and it's having the courage to be foolish. It's having the courage to come up short, and the courage to downsize and acknowledge, you know, what we are as poor, faltering human beings, you know. And, you know, I think of those days on Ladbroke Grove when I was living in that flat before, and eventually what we did, me and my wife, we went off and did this workshop, very intense workshop, and it was one of them where they put us on chairs, and there was a facilitator, and then he invited my wife to speak, you know, and what would you like to say to this man? And she said, what I'd like to say to this fucker, you know, there's a full-on avalanche of stuff, you and your fucking whore, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So there's a big blast of all that, and I went, yeah, and the man went, be quiet, brother, no, hold it. Let her speak, you know, just say, I hear you. So I had to go, I hear you. And I had to say, I hear you, is there more? And she'd go, whoa, and there was more. And eventually, of course, it was exhausted. And then it was like, just like when, whatever abandonment issues were there, you know. And then when I tried to speak, I have to say this, when I got my chance to say my stuff, you know, my wife was like, yes. And the guy was saying, no, you have to let him speak. Occasionally we still do this sort of stuff, but some of it, the power of, we'll sit down and allow 5 minutes each just to kind of get that stuff out. And I think it's back to the humility thing. It's about being willing to take that risk, because it is a surrender. It is about relinquishing control. And, you know, we all have an idea of ourselves as smart or eloquent, and I can be very eloquent and all the rest of it and do all that. But my fear of dropping down into that other place where I feel all that stuff from intergenerational childhood, whatever, and mostly it's a bit like the step 4 and 5. It's what was done to me, but it's also the things that haunt me, what I've done. You know, they're the things that haunt me. And again, it's back to my sponsor. I met up with him recently. He said, we have to be lenient with ourselves. And that's not letting us off the hook. It's just having a bit of compassion for ourselves as human beings, you know, and I'm all right, you know, all that the self-loathing, the self-hate, you know, all that chorus of voices that emerge like a Greek chorus. Immediately we do something, they go, what do you say that for? You know, they're already sure you've said the wrong thing, but if you say to them, okay, brother, tell us what to do, they disappear like ghosts, you know, because they can only do that critical thing from the shadows. And there's a guy I worked with in Canada, he said, what happens with the voices, that chorus of voices that condemn us and say, why is he wearing those clothes? Like, Liverpool, coming from Liverpool, you walk out of a shop with a new pair of trousers on, you can almost hear someone in the street go, fucking look at him, who does he think he is? Sure. You've got a big pair of loons on, you know, one yellow leg and one black leg. But you know, that self-consciousness and shame around how we look, our appearance, you know, does my head look funny in this body, or, you know, all that sort of stuff that cripples us. A lot of this is kind of getting free of all that, you know, realising we're all right, you know. But it is, we were saying, the gift we have here is that we're willing to come and share this stuff. And actually acknowledge it and recognise it. You know, if I speak, some of my family members, they haven't got that emotional bandwidth, you know. I don't mean that they're not capable of it, but you can't really do it in a vacuum. You need to have a hospitable, receptive, which is what a meeting is. It's a place that, you know, I don't speak like this. If I spoke like, I was at the AGM of my organisation yesterday, if I spoke like this in there, they'd be horrified, you know, they wouldn't connect with it, because it's our road is different, really. You know, it's a different thing, and so yeah, and the step 7, that's to say, we, after the Krishna restaurant in the Soho Square, we sat on a bench and read this stuff out. We prayed together. It changed, you know, and it was just that to this day, yeah, I can still get into fights or arguments or, you know, the embarrassment of that, but it's the shorter shelf life. It's some kind of sanity prevails, which wasn't there before. You know, before you'd have to double down and go the whole hog to prove you were right, you know. But now often, you know, I mean, look, as in my work and that, I'm often wrong, and I've started to be okay with that, you know. And look, even this is on a very banal level, but I could listen to a football match. I'm the other side. This is Liverpool. Listen to Liverpool play and survive the frustrations of that match and walk away. And it's not the be all and end all for me. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't. And come away philosophically and be philosophical about it. I think that's a major feat for any of us, really. But no, it's been. You know, I got back with my wife after these workshops and all that. My wife was diagnosed with leukemia just over a decade ago. She's had 2 stem cell transplants. She's in the house now. She's fine. She went to the park yesterday. She had, she broke her hip earlier this year in a fall with the dog. She was on. I mean, it wasn't like an old people's fall. It was. She was on the phone and the dog. So, which is it's better. I don't need that to be made clear. But she's been through so we've always had the kind of shadow of death. She's been in intensive care over the years and all that. So I've had a lot of time sitting in those kind of environments where there's, you know, it's and especially kind of growing up, the music, you know, Lou Reed, you know, I wish that I was, you know, heroin and all that kind of stuff, all that kind of fascination for the morbid, you know, listening to Mahler and all that stuff, and I am half in love with Easeful Death. I think that's it, Keats or what, you know, that kind of feeling. When my wife was actually close to death in the intensive care, none of that was at play. There was nothing romantic about it at all. It was a fucking dead zone. It was like, it was grey, and I had nothing. It was like, you know, I couldn't go to meetings because the identification, you know, and all that. It was a very dark period for me, and obviously darker for her. You know, she was fighting for survival. But 11 years on, let's say she's in the house, we're fine. It is day at a time stuff. But I couldn't have ever imagined being there for another human being in that way. You know, I'm too selfish or narcissistic. But I found myself, I've said it before, labouring along the Westway in my battered old Almera, trying to get to the Hammersmith Hospital where she was. And it was like, you just do it. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of this stuff is very domestic. You just show up, like you guys coming here tonight. We all have debates about coming or not. You know, have a debate, do I do the share or not and all that. But I've learned through experience, just show up. Then you're in with a chance If I don't show up, I have to make up stories to explain why I didn't show up. How you could see, there's Storm Bert or something was coming in, or some nonsense. Or, well, I've started to have doubts about this recovery, Lark. I think it's a cult, So I've heard all these things over the years, but the thing about this, I've never, both working as therapists, I've listened to loads of therapists over the years. I've seen loads of different models, and I've seen loads of different interventions for addiction and the rest of it. There's nothing like this. It's unique. And you don't even have to do anything here. Just being immersed in this space, I heal, and that's magical. There's something about it that just works. And it doesn't matter where you are on the journey or anything else. It's almost not a journey. I know it is a journey and all that, but it's being here. It's just showing up. Anyway, I've rambled on, but I hope there was enough on step 7 in there. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.